so we're going to go ahead and start right now. People can log in as we go. But I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit. We'll introduce a few people. So we have Tom Spiggle, who is a former federal prosecutor and founder of Spiggle Law. He works out of DC, so say hi.
Hey guys.
And then we have Paul Abraham, who is a business attorney and founder of PJ Law, out of Fairfax as well. So, and then I'm going to talk to you about a few marketing tips just to kind of get you back in the game, because I know a lot of us are working out of anxiety or unsureness or fear. I hate to say that word, but some of us are. So I just want to kind of ground us a little bit. I'm going to take about 5 or 10 minutes to open this up with some marketing tips and kind of cool you down. And then these two heroes are going to take over because they have all the knowledge on how to help you through the rescue package and the COVID-19 rescue package. I know that some of it is super easy. I know that my husband actually applied for one before I finished my email this morning. So take a breath. You can get this done. But just right now, relax, kind of get your tea, get your coffee, get your water, and we're going to go through. I'm going to take about 5 or 10 minutes and share with you my PowerPoint for marketing. So let's see. Let me go ahead and exit, share screen. Now, are you guys seeing low cost or no cost marketing strategies?
Yep.
You seeing just the guy with the time in the middle of his head? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So a lot of us are, again, funds are a little bit tight for some of us. Some of us we're still stable, and some of our businesses are going strong. If you are still looking for ways to get your message out there for low cost or no cost, we can actually talk a little bit about that today. Again, this is going to be 5 or 10 minutes. If you have a notebook, I suggest you take notes, and you can ask me questions later on today or next week or whatever you feel like. But today, again, is going to be Paul and Tom talking about the rescue packages. Utilize your time wisely. A lot of us are kind of just operating and just getting things done and not really realizing that we need a plan. So the first thing we should do is review and update what we currently already have. Create or update a plan that you have and execute. So reviewing is really important. So let's talk about reviewing. Reviewing is free, right? It takes your time, and a lot of us have a lot of extra time right now. So review your marketing message. Some of us are like, oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to figure out who I want to touch or what I want to say. Well, here's a great time where you can actually sit down and say, what do I really want my message to be? If you want to rebrand, this is a great time to do it. Find your niche market. A lot of us just say, I want to sell to everybody. I want to, that's not the way to do it. I know a great dentist who can do everything, but his niche market is cosmetic dentistry because, number one, that's what he loves to do. And so as soon as he niched down into, I only offer cosmetic dentistry, the people that were coming for cosmetic dentistry would ask, hey, do you fill cavities? Hey, do you do teeth cleaning? Hey, do you do? So he was picking up all this extra business. I'm not saying don't get the extra business. I'm saying the beauty is in making yourself an expert in a certain niche of your field. So think about what that really looks like. Your ideal client, take the time to review the past 12 months of who you've sold your business product to. And then come up with a list that makes specifics on your clients, their age range, their marital status, their economic standing, their personality type. Are they a dog lover or a cat lover? All of these little things matter, especially when you're trying to touch base with clients on a personal level. And you can actually see these. People are attracted to you more than they are your product. So who is it that you naturally attract? And then start creating your marketing to delve after those types of clients. Here's a big one. Updating your CRM. Contrary to popular belief, that is not a CRM, okay? Having business cards sitting on your desk is not a CRM. And there are lots of low cost, no cost CRMs. MailChimp is a good one. You can do automated emails. You can do notes in your files. You can do all kinds of stuff with the free account. And I think you can have up to 2,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, in your data. And I think HubSpot offers a free account. So there's a lot of free options out there. Even if it's an Excel sheet, listen, get organized. This is the time to do it. So your CRM is going to be magic for you when this is all over. The right CRM should be something, if you're attacking the free CRMs, that's great. If you already have a CRM and you are paying good money for that every month, you better be looking into that CRM and saying, how can I automate this better? How can I create a campaign, a drip campaign for my clients? How do I make it personal? These are things that you need to ask yourself. Delve into the products that you are already purchased and paying for on a month-to-month basis, and become an expert in them. Because when this all dissipates, and it will, you need to be ready, and you need to be ready with all your campaigns. So create or update a plan. Your touch point campaign should include emails. And I'm not talking about automated emails, although your automated newsletters are awesome. They should be monthly at most, quite honestly, and they should offer something of value and never selling. But your emails I'm talking about here are personal ones. And you can still automate a personal email. You can still say, hey, I was just thinking about you in the subject line. And then in the body of the email, you could actually just put a picture of a beach somewhere and saying, wishing that we were on that beach together. And you could literally send that to every single person and they will love you forever. And that could be an automated email. So make sure it benefits your customers and prospects in some way. Either it's an emotional benefit, brings joy to them, or it's a financial benefit where you could give them tips about the COVID packages, right? Text messaging. It's beauty. You can automate this as well, or you can just pick up your phone and decide that you're going to touch 5 clients a day with a text, a personal text. There's P2P texting out there. Your CRM some CRMs offer automated texting. So look into what you currently have and see how you can bring all of these up. Calls. Listen, I got a voice message from someone the other day. I was busy. I couldn't answer. She left the greatest voice message ever. Didn't ask me to purchase anything. She was just saying, hey, how are you doing? Voicemails are magic. People are like, oh, I'm not gonna leave a voice. If you leave a personal voicemail, listen, I network with hundreds of people. And if you know me for 5 minutes, you know that my network is huge. But those people that text me, I got 2 texts this morning from people that I network with. They are on the top of my mind. And that's where you want to be with your prospects and clients. So do not think that calls are not important or voicemails are not important. They certainly are. Video is great. You can text a video, you can email a video. Gmail offers a free plugin, and all you do is you click, I think, your space bar, and you start talking, and it videos you if you have a camera on your computer. And then you can click and send, and it emails them that video. So you can sing happy birthday, you can sing, happy COVID day. I don't know, whatever you want to sing, do it, because you will stay top of mind with your clients. Hard mailings are awesome, but not hard mailings that try to sell. I'm talking about fun postcards or small trinkets, or even a lot of real estate agents will drop by things on the doorstep, and you don't have to knock and you don't have to go in. You can literally just drop a little, some of us buy tons and tons of those marketing trinkets, keychains, cups, whatever. Why not just take those right now and drop them off? Or mail them out. If you're small enough, throw them in an envelope and mail them out. So executing the plan. At least, statistically, you should be touching your prospects and your clients 12 times a year. And that is at least. So here's a 12 personal touch campaign that I've created, and you can plug in to those blocks anything that you want to. So I did a series of personal email, text, postcard, video, and phone call, and then repeated until I got to 12. But you can throw in something else into one of those blocks, right? Like a social media comment. So maybe their daughter just got married and you put don't just like it, comment on it and say, oh my God, Nancy, your daughter is absolutely stunning that day. And you almost showed her up with your dress as well. And just, that would just make someone feel so amazing, right? Or, hey, Fred, I saw that you won your championship for bowling. That's so cool. Congratulations. I didn't know you bowled. We should do a game together. Like those kinds of comments in social media will go a long, long way. So plug in social media to this 12 touches throughout the year of personal contact. If you're not a phone person, you don't want to leave, then take that out. Put something else in there. Whatever it is that you want to do. But remember, a lot of this and the bottom can be automated. Social media, there's a thing called Meet Edgar. I think it's minimal cost. It's not very much a month. I don't remember how much it was, but you can literally plug in your content for social media and let Edgar post it for you on a day-to-day basis. So that's spectacular. If you are into making everything automated, your email newsletters, even though I want you to make them personal, you can still automate those. Automate a campaign within your already CRM if you have one. Make personal email touches and then hit send, something that would be personal to every single person that you do and would have 100% open rate. If you have subject lines that say, hey, I was just thinking about you today, or, oh my gosh, you've got to see this eagle flying, or, people are gonna, what, eagle flying, what's that? And you open it up and it's a picture of an eagle and it says, I was thinking about you and how you soar so well, or whatever. Like something, if you want to be cheesy, be cheesy. If you want to be real, be real. But it has to match you, because remember, going back to our first slide, people buy from you. You attract people who like you. So whatever be you and all of these contacts and all of these touches, because that is how you're going to get your avatar. That's how you're going to get the person that you want to do business with. Does that make sense? Newsletters, birthday cards, those are all things that you can automate and do really well at. And again, birthday cards, postcards, all of these things, there are companies out there, little or no cost, that you can get this done. I know a company right now that's offering pre-setup, and for like literally $49 a month, you can have unlimited postcards. Now, if you have a couple hundred clients, unlimited postcards is a big deal for you. So definitely, if you have questions on any of this, or how to even set up your own 12 touch campaign or ideas, there's my slide. You'll see it again later on, but I want to go ahead and stop my share now because I did just want to kind of warm you up and show you that there's lots of things for you to be doing right now that you can absolutely be a lot more successful with when we launch. Because Mark Cuban was on TV last night, and he said that when this turns around, it's going to turn around big, and you want to set yourself up for the turnaround. I don't want you to be thinking of today. I want you to be thinking of 3 months from now. What's my business going to look like? If you're not prepared for that huge launch, then you're going to lose out on a lot of business. So that's my 2 cents. And I want to turn it over to Tom right now, because this is why we're all here. We want to learn more about how to legally prepare ourselves currently for this time. And then Paul will let us know about our free money options as well. So we're all excited about that. Tom, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
All right, great. Thanks, Melody. And just to dovetail on what you were talking about niching. So, when I started my practice, I do employment law for mostly employees. And, but I decided to write a book because I saw a lot of need for it, called You're Pregnant, You're Fired. And so we do a lot of pregnancy discrimination, a lot of caregiver discrimination, but of course, that's not all we do. So just because, to your point, Mel, just because you niche doesn't mean you have to turn away business. It's just a way for you to kind of break through the marketing fog that, everybody's getting bombarded with. So I think that's a great tip, and it certainly has worked for me. All right, so let me jump into my slides here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about kind of the changing landscape of employment law, particularly as applies to small businesses. And there's a bunch of stuff going on, and I'm not going to get through all of it in 15 minutes. I'm going to try to hit some of the highlights. You can certainly go to my webpage, which is Spiggle Law, Spiggle, SpiggleLaw.com. We have a whole separate page on COVID-related employment changes. And a lot of these changes now for the first time apply to small businesses, which is why it's particularly important that folks are paying attention. So moving on to my first slide here, which is just sort of a note of hope here. I don't know if you guys remember in Forrest Gump. You remember the Bubba Gump shrimp company, like how it had this massive success. Well, the reason that you may recall, if you've seen the movie recently, they initially go out and they're not catching any shrimp. They can't, they're pulling up like pots and pans out of the water. I mean, it's nothing. And then they sail out real far one day, and there is a storm along the shore, and it wrecks all the other boats except theirs. And so then they're the only shrimp boat out there, and they are catching all the shrimp, and that's how, in the movie, it becomes the famous Bubba Shrimp Company. So I think the point is that these are tough times for all of us, but there are going to be lots of opportunities. And for those folks who can hang on and be ready, to Melody's point, they're going to be, I think even more on the other end. So let's figure out how we keep everything in the boat, so to speak, and we'll go into my next slide. So yes, so employment law is changing radically for small employers. It used to be that besides the Fair Labor Standards Act, which controls overtime, that many laws didn't apply to businesses that had fewer than 15 employees, and some laws for even more. For example, the the Family Medical Leave Act, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, you had to have 50 or more employees for it to even apply. Well, now a lot of these laws are applying directly to small employers. It's a big game changer. And as I think anything that Paul and I say here today, we've got to throw in some legalese because we're lawyers. Shouldn't be considered specific legal advice to your situation. If you've got a legal question, you should, of course, consult your own lawyer and share with them your specific details, because the advice may change depending on what you share. So we can move on to the next slide. A great resource for employment law, particularly for COVID-related information, is the Department of Labor. And you see the website there, www.dol.gov. They have a whole separate page, which is, you see the screenshot here of, for COVID-related changes. You'll see at the bottom here, at the bottom of this slide, there's a really great link to with a bunch of questions that employers have that DOL has answered related to COVID and how employment laws are changing. So I recommend, bookmarking this page. Just keep an eye on it. No, we're not expecting, you're not lawyers, don't expect some of it's going to be legalese, but a lot of it is, particularly their Q&A, is written for non-lawyers. So keep an eye on this as there are changes. DOL posts here, and it's a great resource for staying on top of this, really rapidly changing legal environment. And we can move on to the next one. All right, so let's talk about the two, things I want to talk about in particular, and those are the sick leave, and there are two portions of that, or leave generally, paid leave. There are two portions of that under the new law, under the FFCRA. One is emergency sick leave, and one is the expanded FMLA. You should note that this does not apply to healthcare providers. I don't know if we have any of those folks on the line, but hospitals, doctors, there's going to be a question about who falls within that category. But if you are a health provider, somebody who does, they are exempted from these, they're exempt from these new laws. You should be aware, for small employers, the thing about that's important is that for the Family Medical Leave Act in particular, there are some pretty significant, it's a complicated law, there are some pretty significant penalties if you violate it. You can, not only can you have to pay wages, lost wages to an employee who's been adversely affected, you can have to pay them other damages, liquidated damages, which is often 2 times their lost wages. And if there's a violation found, you have to pay their attorney's fees on top of that. So it's a pretty expensive law if you violate it. And, the reason that it applied to employers with 50 or more employees is because it's fairly complicated to enact. But now DOL has expanded it, at least for these purposes, for these narrow purposes, to all employers. So it's one to keep on top of and to make sure that you're reading that Department of Labor advice, you're staying on top of that. If you need to consult an attorney, certainly do that. I will say this is all in flux. We're going to get to this in a minute. Some exemptions that small employers can apply for. DOL, Department of Labor, has made it very clear that they want employers and employees to kind of work together as much as possible to try to get this right. I think the federal government certainly recognizes this is going to be a big sea change for small employers. So it's something you have to be aware of and watch over, but know that there are no hard and fast rules. I think we're going to see some good faith exceptions if you're doing your best to try to implement the law. You may avoid penalties if you do have a violation that it's just because you didn't know. Nevertheless, important to stay on top of that. So let's go on to our next slide here. Okay, let's talk about emergency sick leave. The sick leave provision applies to all employers, regardless of your size, and it applies to all employees that you employ. And there is a great, I'm going to show you there's a great cheat sheet here. It's the employee rights flyer from the Department of Labor, which is on that link that I shared with you. It's worth looking at this. It really breaks out when this emergency sick leave applies, but it essentially applies when somebody's at work and somebody can't come to work because they're subject to an isolation or a stay-at-home order. They've been advised by a health care provider to stay at home because they have COVID-related symptoms, or if they have COVID-related symptoms and they are seeking medical care. In those three situations, and a full-time employee gets their full benefits for 2 weeks. There is a limit of a cap of $2,000. So that's important to know and you have a duty as an employer to both notify your employees of this new law, and if they raise an FMLA issue or this e-sick issue, to notify them of their rights. There's a smaller or a more limited provision for those first 2 weeks if somebody has to stay at home because of their child is out of school, because they're closed because of COVID, and for childcare reasons they can't come into work. Then they get 2/3 of those benefits, not the full 2 weeks. So let's skip to the next slide. So now we're past those 2 weeks. We got the expanded FMLA leave. And again, this now applies to all employers. It only applies if a worker needs to stay at home because of childcare reasons. Okay, their school is closed because of COVID. They can't get into work, and so they're going to need the time off. You are required to give them that time off. You're required to give them their full rate of pay up to the cap mentioned by the Department of Labor, which is $12,000 for the full 10 weeks, and protect their job. Okay, so you can't, in most situations, you can't give away their job. You will get a tax credit for this. I'm not a tax lawyer, so you would need to consult your CPA or your tax lawyer, but under the new law, you will get a tax credit for the money you pay out. So you will get some of that back. It may not help on the front end, but there will be a tax credit available. It's important to remember that this expanded FMLA only applies to somebody who's staying home because of childcare, not for other reasons that might be covered by FMLA. So if somebody is unfortunate enough to have cancer and receiving ongoing treatment, or is in the hospital for another reason, this expanded FMLA does not apply unless you're an employer with 50 or more employees. Another word on expanded FMLA leave, you're not required as an employer to offer what's called intermittent leave. And that is where with intermittent leave, somebody gets a couple hours off during the day, let's say to go to a doctor, and they get those leave for only those 2 hours and they come back to work. A lot of us these days are teleworking, so intermittent leave, even if you've got kids at home, as I do today, is entirely possible. You can provide that. So you are allowed to provide your employee with intermittent leave, but you are not required to. So, if your employee says, if you want to work that out and they say, I can, my husband's or my wife is taking care of the kids for these 4 hours, so I got to be off. but I can work these 4 hours, and you can give them what's called intermittent leave. But again, you are not required to. If they can't work during that time, then you're not required to give them that intermittent leave, but you might have to give them that full day. So it may be an incentive to provide them that leave. All right, next slide. There are some exemptions, and again, it's on that link, the questions in the Department of Labor. I believe it's question number 58. What I've got here is really boiled down to kind of carve out some of the legalese, but it is a little bit simplified. I would refer to that question for the 3 categories at which you can get an exemption. And at least as of today, the Department of Labor was saying, don't send us information seeking an exemption. They're so overwhelmed that they're not even accepting this information. So we are expecting guidelines to come out to give people more guidance as to how to actually submit for these exemptions. But here are the 3. Essentially, if it would cost you, giving the leave would cost you more money than you would have, right? Again, that's a little bit of a oversimplification, but that's essentially what it means. If you would be cash negative because somebody qualifies for leave, but to pay them out would mean that you're losing money, you're not required to do it. That doesn't mean, at least as I read that guidance, that it's hard for you, that you would have less money than you would ordinarily like. It needs to be like, if I pay this person out, it's going to be the difference between me staying in business and going out of business, then you could have an exemption. If this employee has specific knowledge such that giving them leave would be a financial hardship to your company, then you're not required to give them the leave. So somebody who's a high level, who you just can't, do without, then you're not required to give them that leave. The third one is you need that worker regardless of their qualifications to keep going as a business. There are no other workers available. You need somebody to make these widgets, and if you let them go, you're not going to be able to make widgets anymore. If you give them this leave, you can get an exemption. So those are the 3 categories. Again, how you apply for them to be determined. We're waiting for the Department of Labor to indicate what that would be. Again, I think there's, there's been no guidance to this effect, but my prediction is there's going to be some leeway for companies who are trying to do this in good faith. So, I would keep documentation. If you are denying somebody leave for one of these reasons, I would keep documentation for why you're doing it and why you think it falls into one of these categories. So when you are able to seek an actual exemption from the Department of Labor, you can get it. All right, we'll move on to my next slide here. Keep in mind that the old laws, we'll call them old pre-COVID-19 laws, still apply. So Fair Labor Standards Act, again, wage requirements to pay minimum wage and overtime apply to all employers. So keep that in mind as always when you are making these decisions, particularly as people are working from home. If you've got people that are working on an hourly basis, you're going to need them to record their time to make sure that you are paying them properly. And the same is true for anti-discrimination laws. These laws still apply. Many of the federal laws do not apply to small employers, so 15 employees or less, but it can vary by state. For example, in DC, you're covered by all anti-discrimination laws in DC. So, and now where people are working from home more, any kind of inappropriate memes that people are sharing, any of those could be the basis for discrimination action. So just be on the lookout for those and know that these pre-COVID rules still apply. And as always, if you have any questions, specific questions about employment law and how it applies to you, you can certainly reach out to me. And I think that wraps it up for me. And I will hand the baton over to Paul. And we will at the end save a little bit of time for Q&A as well.
All right, excellent. And Tom, just to confirm, everything you just said was formal legal advice that's specifically applicable to every single person on this call, right? I just want to be clear about that.
Everybody is my client. No.
All right. So, all right. No, in all seriousness, no, it's the exact opposite of what I just said. And the same with me. Everything I'm going to say is not formal legal advice and all that jazz. All right. But pleasure to be on with you, Tom and Melody. Just so you know, these two are true experts in what they do and in their fields, and I'm really honored to be on this Zoom with them, and I'm excited to be here today. So, by the way, I hate that you guys can see me because I know that there's someone out there who's counting how many times I'm touching my face and judging me for it. So hopefully you guys leave me alone in that respect. But in all seriousness, I would like to congratulate all of you for making time for this today. You know, when so many other business owners just would not. You know, from what I've seen over the last few weeks, and I said this yesterday, I did a webinar, you know, there are two types of business owners. The ones that are completely giving up and surrendering and procrastinating and hiding in the corner. And then there are the ones who are grabbing the bull by the horns and taking action to save their business and their future. And everyone on this call is by definition in that second group. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Paul Abraham. I'm CEO of PGI law firm here in Fairfax, Virginia. And we practice in the areas of business law as well as estate planning, which includes wills and trusts and medical directives. But today, you know, we're going to be focusing on some practical and legal advice for surviving in the next couple of months, okay? Our team has worked with hundreds and hundreds of business owners in all kinds of industries and professions. You know, we've got restaurants and schools and doctors and dentists and home care, martial arts, contractors, consulting firms, retail, you name it. So we've been very well situated in observing how owners are reacting and what's been working and what hasn't been working. So why is it so important to hold on to cash right now? Okay, it's so that you can survive. And why do I think it's so important to just survive for a couple of months? And this really goes back to the awesome example from Forrest Gump that Tom just talked about. Because the thing is, I want you guys to know that when this thing is over, there's going to be so much pent-up demand for most of you. There's going to be so much work and so much business coming in that you won't know what to do with it. And only the businesses that have kept it together, that have kept their image, that have kept their operating procedures intact will get to benefit. And of course, only the businesses that have kept their key people and their teams happy and feeling good and energized and motivated will survive, okay? And that's part of it. Now, the other part, though, is getting cash and holding on to cash to get you to that point. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's first talk about dealing with your vendors to help you reduce or avoid payables right now, okay? This is very practical advice. It's not even legal advice. Go grab, after this call, grab your bank statement and grab your credit card statement and literally go down the list. Look at every expense and call every single one of those vendors, especially the regular monthly vendors, and just call them and say, look, I'm going, you know, like everyone else, you know, I'm going through a very difficult time. I know you, I appreciate you, I've been good to you, you've been good to me. What can you do for me? Can we defer some payments? Can you avoid, you know, get rid of late charges, maybe collect half of what I owe you, or whatever. We're seeing some incredible results with that. We're seeing clients calling their vendors and they're getting all kinds of breaks. And also do it on the personal side, by the way. Your personal credit cards. Credit card companies are, some of them are waiving interest, some of them are letting you skip minimum payments. You know, all kinds of vendors are doing special things, and some people are getting permanent discounts out of that, not just temporary discounts. But the thing is, you're not going to get that either on the business or personal side unless you specifically ask for it. Okay, no vendor is gonna call you and be like, oh, things are tough right now, we're gonna give you a break. No, you've got to ask for it. And related to that is be good to your vendors. Many of their clients are not paying them. And if you can't pay, at least call them and say that. That's so much better than just not sending a check. I think they'll really appreciate it, both in the short term and the long term, and it helps you salvage that relationship. Now, another option is, look, a lot of vendors need cash right now because they're not getting paid right now. So what you can do is say, look, I have a little bit of cash that I can dedicate to something I'm definitely going to need in the next 6 months or whatever. So you call the vendor and you say, look, I need your service for 6 months. If I prepay you for 4 of those months now, can I get the 2 extra months for free? And a lot of vendors are willing to give you extra stuff in exchange for being paid upfront several months ahead of time right now today. So consider that as well. The second thing to consider is business interruption insurance. That has been a huge debate in the community. The insurance companies are generally saying, no, that doesn't apply to coronavirus. But you know, a lot of lawyers are begging to differ, and I think the answer is it depends on your policy. So you know, we would encourage you to bring your policy to your attorney to get it reviewed. It's possible that your business interruption insurance might be covered by what's going on right now, the forcible shutdowns, the coronavirus situation. So don't overlook that. Look at your commercial policy and have it reviewed, okay? Third thing, and this is a big one with those of you with commercial landlords. I know not everyone has one, but those of you who haven't, this is a big deal for you. You should know that landlords are in huge trouble. Okay, a lot of them are small businesses, but even those who are not, they're just in huge trouble. They've got a lot of tenants about to default on them. And if a landlord has something like 20 units and 8 of the units can't pay, they don't want 8 vacant spaces because A, they'll have a hard time filling those up, especially with the economy the way it is, and it'll reduce foot traffic for the other 12 tenants who will want to vacate at some point too. You know, at the same time, landlords are not going to roll over, so you've got to strike that delicate balance. Okay, so here's what you can do. If you can't pay, approach them. Generally speaking, for most landlords, they'll treat you a lot better in the short and long terms if you approach them rather than just not sending a check. Okay, tell them you want to work something out. Possibilities include deferring rent. We've seen a lot of our clients, we've been working out deals where instead of paying the next 3 months of rent, the landlord will defer these 3 payments to the end of the lease. You could negotiate something like 50% reduction for the next 90 days. There are a lot of possible solutions. If the landlord's is not being cooperative, you can consider banding together with other tenants. This could especially work for places like strip malls, but it could really work in other places as well. It'll give you more leverage. We've seen groups of tenants come to us, which helps because they can divide their legal fees amongst themselves, and landlords tend to take lawyers a lot more seriously when it comes to negotiations, especially if they're representing a group. And of course, what you should also do is have a lawyer review your lease. Every lease is different, but many of them have clauses that could help you out in a situation like this. For example, you may have heard of force majeure or act of God clauses. They don't say the words coronavirus in there, but it could very well cover this situation. There's also other things like provisions that require a certain number of co-tenants in the development or in the mall that you're in or whatever. And if the landlord's not providing those tenants with open businesses right now, that could, the landlord themselves might be in breach. So there's a lot of things like that you probably don't even know about because your lease is 40 pages long, okay? So let's move on to SBA loans. And you know, we're going to talk about 6 different possibilities, and some are more applicable than others, but a lot of people have only been talking about the disaster loan, EIDL, and the PPP, but there are actually more options. And so I'm glad you're here on this call because we're going to get into that now. So first is, next slide please, Angela. First is very simple. Just ask for a modification of your existing loan. If you have an existing loan with the bank, restrictions have been really loosened right now. So if you call them and ask for a modification or ask for some kind of terms, there's a very real chance that they'll do it because they're not bound by the restrictions they were bound by before. So that's just straight up very easy. Call your bank or your loan provider and talk to them about that. Number 2, small business debt relief program. So a lot of you have already been contacted by your banks about this. But if you have an existing SBA loan, you probably got or about to get an email from your bank saying, look, you don't have to pay for 6 months and the SBA will cover part of it. And you know, interest won't accrue and it's just beautiful. It's basically a 6 months holiday for those of you with SBA loans. If your bank hasn't reached out to you about that, you should reach out to them about that. Okay, next slide, please. So this is one of the big ones, okay? Economic injury disaster loans. We call them EIDLs, okay? So let's talk about who can apply. Next slide, please, Angela. There are different types and exceptions, but I'm gonna tailor this to make it relevant to just the people in this audience. Generally speaking, a business with 500 employees or less, or an individual who operates under a sole proprietorship with or without employees or as an independent contractor or a private nonprofit. Okay, there are more detailed qualifications and all that stuff, but we're not going to get into that right now because it's more than we need to get into. You have to be in a federal declared disaster area, and congratulations, you are all in a federal declared disaster area. So you meet that standard. But that's not enough, okay? To apply for the loan, you need to have suffered substantial economic injury as a result of the coronavirus situation, okay? That generally means a decrease in income from operations or working capital, with the result that the business is unable to meet its obligations and pay its regular expenses in the normal course of business. Now, there's no specific formula for that, but we can help you develop how exactly you can demonstrate the substantial economic injury, but that's a requirement, okay? And you have to establish that it was a direct result of the disaster. Now, the maximum loan size is $2 million. The interest rate is 3.75%, and the term year is up to 30 years. Okay, it sounds very favorable. I think the loan size will be a lot smaller for most businesses on this call, but that's kind of the maximum. The first payment would be due 1 year after the loan origination date, which is a very nice grace period. And you don't need to have finished your 2019 taxes, but they may check your credit and use that to make a decision. Now, any funds received, you have to be very, very careful about how you use and get professional guidance on using them. You can use them to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other operating expenses that can't be paid because of the disaster's impact. But the penalty for misusing disaster funds is immediate repayment at 1.5 times the original amount of the loan. So, A, you get in trouble if you apply improperly, if you don't meet the standard for economic injury, and you get in trouble if you misuse the funds. That's why I'm so annoyed with all the advice out there from accountants and lawyers and notaries that every business should blindly apply and get free money and you can pocket it and whatever. What they're doing is putting people in serious dangers. Don't try to do it without professional guidance. We've had businesses come to us about this, and many of them were doing it for them, but others, we've told them, no, based on your situation, we really don't think you should do it. So get that assessment. Now, we don't know how long it's going to take the SBA to actually ask for the additional information it's probably going to ask for, or to fund the loans, but at this point, we don't actually really expect funding to happen for at least, probably, my guess is 1 or 2 months. Which takes us to the next item, which is number 4, the emergency grant. When applying, you have the choice to also ask for this grant if you certify that you're eligible for it. It's a $10,000 grant that you're supposed to receive within 3 days. Big fat lie, that's not happening, because we've had applications go out more than 3 days ago, and almost nobody, I don't know that I know anyone who's actually gotten the grant actually anywhere. So I think it's going to take more than 3 days, but it should be a matter of days and not weeks, hopefully. Now, this advance payment may be used for providing sick leaves and maintaining payroll and meeting increased costs to obtain materials, making rent or mortgage payments, and repaying obligations that cannot be met due to revenue losses. Okay, so you also have to be careful about how you spend this money. But here's the beauty of this grant, is that even if you get denied for the larger loan, you get to keep the $10,000 and you don't have to pay it back. So it's literally free money, okay? Number 5, SBA Express Bridge Loans. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but people don't know about it, so I wanted to just mention it. Call your bank. This is kind of a quick $25,000 loan to hold you over until you get the bigger loans. Ask your banker about that. And then we're going to go into the last big one, and then we'll be done with my part. So, Paycheck Protection Program. There has been a lot of confusion on this, and some banks have even been refusing to process these loans because their profit margin would be so low. So there have been some intense negotiations about this, and finally last night the SBA dropped 31 pages of changes and clarifications because they decided that they don't want me to sleep. And I've done my absolute best between last night and this morning to update this presentation to account for these changes. And my team this morning is already reading the changes and incorporating the latest into the PPP loan applications that we're doing. But it's not perfect because I had a few hours to update this. But almost everything here will be pretty general and pretty accurate. Okay. And by the way, that's important for for being very careful about who's your agent for these applications. You've got accountants and bookkeepers and notarios trying to act as agents to help you apply. And you've got to wonder how many of them are actually keeping up and reading these things when they come out from the SBA on a daily basis. So that's something important to keep in mind. Angela, can you go down 2 slides? Yeah, just go, and then there you go, perfect. So who's eligible? Again, any business, well, almost any business that's 500 or fewer employees. There are exceptions, but probably not applicable to most people in this audience. You could be nonprofit with under 500 fewer employees. You have to have been in operation on February 15. And you need to have had employees for whom you've paid salary and payroll taxes or independent contractors in the past. There are some exclusions to like illegal activities. We won't get into that, but most businesses are eligible if they can certify that current economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary to support your ongoing operations. So you have to certify that. It's less of a drastic standard than the EIDL loan, but you still have to certify that. Like you can't be like Zoom like really shouldn't be applying for this loan. Like they can't certify that current economic uncertainty makes the loan unnecessary, or I mean necessary to support their obligations. Now you can apply for up to a $10 million loan, but for most businesses it'll be a lot lower than that. And it's gonna be limited by this formula. Okay, they're gonna look at your aggregate payroll costs for the last 12 months for US-based employees, minus any compensation paid to an employee over $100,000. Then they're going to divide that by 12 to get a monthly average. Then they're going to multiply that number by 2.5. So to give you an example, if you have an annual payroll of $240,000 and they're all the employees are under 100K, then you'd have an average monthly payroll of 20,000. You multiply that by 2.5 and you end up with a maximum loan of 50,000. Now in the last week, there was a huge debate about whether independent contractors count as employees for the purposes of this calculation. And most people, including some SBA reps, were saying yes. And yesterday I did a webinar where I said that per my reading of the law, I had some serious doubts about that. And indeed, last night's SBA clarification confirmed that, unfortunately, independent contractors do not count as employees for the purposes of these PPP loan calculations, but they can apply on their own for this loan. Now, if you do get the loan, the maturity date, we initially said, they had said it was going to be up to 10 years, but the SBA now has said that it's probably going to be 2 years, which is a pretty drastic difference. But the good news is that you won't have to make payments on it for 6 months following the disbursement of the loan. Now, here's the big part of this. There's forgiveness available, okay? Next slide, please. So if you play your cards right, you could have the entire amount of the loan forgiven. Okay, to get full forgiveness, you have to spend at least 75% of the loan amount on payroll costs, and the rest of it either on payroll costs or things like group healthcare benefits, rent payments, utility payments, and interest on other loans. If you use the loan amount for anything else other than these items over the 8 weeks after getting the loan, you will owe money when your loan is due. If you intentionally misuse those funds, not only will you have to pay back those loans, but you'll be subject to additional liability such as charges for fraud. So again, be super, super careful about how you spend the money, and you should have professional assistance when applying for that forgiveness later on, okay? The SBA now has said that they're going to be issuing additional guidance on loan forgiveness, so we're going to keep an eye on that. Now, one big recommendation I have for everyone is have different bank accounts for all these things. I'm recommending a different bank account for the 10,000, a different bank account for any additional EIDL loans, and a different bank account for the PPP loan, so that you can very clearly track where all the money's going to. Otherwise, you risk having to pay it back or losing it. Now, the bank is not your advocate, and I've got about 20 seconds here and I'm done. So the bank is not your advocate and is not allowed to be your advocate. It's a conflict of interest. So you should have an agent rather than trying to handle your application yourself or relying on the bank to do it, because they can't really do it for you. The beauty of it is that you don't have to pay anything extra. The agent gets paid from the bank's share, so it costs you nothing more out of pocket. It's one of the few opportunities that someone has to, hire a law firm at basically zero cost to them. and you get professional assistance to apply for the PPP in a way that maximizes your chance of getting the largest loan possible and not being charged for fraud. And that's it. That was a lot of info in very little time, but now I'm happy to throw it back to Tom.
Great. And, you know, that's a great information. And, you know, folks, look, Paul's, in addition to being my friend, a great lawyer, I think you should hire him. Obviously, you know, this is no attorney's fees or attorney's fees are going to get paid, but at the very least, I recommend following social media feeds from lawyers like Paul, because the landscape on this SBA loan, as Paul mentioned, is changing daily. And at some point, somebody's gonna have to pay the piper on this, and you don't want it to be you just because you didn't put something in the right column on your spreadsheet, or you got bad advice from somebody who wasn't a lawyer. So, you know, I know a lot of small business lawyers like Paul, and I know the ferment in this area is pretty intense. So I think it's worth your while to at least follow somebody like Paul, if not hire them. On that note, Paul and I did want to offer something new. We are offering a joint consult, and this is going to be a new program, so we're limiting it to 5 businesses at this point, but it's going to be a flat fee of $750 where you get a consult on employment issues and these issues that Paul has talked about, because what we found is there's a lot of bleeding back and forth between the 2 issues about, you know, how do you handle staff, particularly when we're looking at these PPP loans, like how do you dismiss somebody if you need to without jeopardizing that, or violating the law, or complying with these, you know, these new sick leave provisions in the FFCRA. So we are offering to this group first, we're limiting it to 5 spots, and after today, we're going to open it up to everyone. If you're interested in that, you can contact me or Paul by email, and we'll be happy to follow up with you.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat box. It says, the first one is, just to clarify, based on this, if one employee made over $100 last year, they are not eligible. I'm not sure what that was.
So okay, so I think that I think you probably mean $100,000. Yeah. So probably the person who's asking this question is wondering if one employee made over $100,000 a year, are they not eligible for calculating the monthly average payroll of the last 12 months? That's an excellent question. So the good news is, no, it's not that they would be ineligible, but you can only consider their income up to $100,000 when calculating your average monthly payroll for the last 12 months. So not all is lost, just a portion over $100,000.
Okay, that's great. The second one is for CARES. I understand that you apply through your bank. I heard that Wells Fargo was not part of the program. Where should I go for this?
Yeah, so great question. A lot of banks are, like I was saying before, they're really worried about not making money on this the way things are right now. So they're not even accepting these. So there are, look, you know, one option is you can keep calling around banks if you want to try to do it yourself. But like I said, you know, I would recommend using an agent because it would cost you nothing more out of pocket. And then the agents, the good agents, are well connected with lenders and can get you in sometimes where you more efficiently and faster, where you may not be able to do it yourself. So I would recommend that you start with an agent. Otherwise, you could keep calling around banks, but they all have long queues, and yeah, it's an issue.
Okay. We have a couple more that came up in the chat box. If you use a line of credit to run payroll, since these loans seem to take a while to go through, would you be able to use the loans to pay that off if you can use that line of credit for payroll?
So look, for the PPP, you know, first of all, they said they're going to issue more guidelines on this. I don't think the SBA even knows exactly how they're going to do this. But I can tell you, you know, what I'm comfortable saying, and as best practices for the PPP, when that money comes in, I would not use it to pay off your line of credit. I would instead use it directly to pay your payroll expenses at that time. Now, generally speaking, you might be able to use some of these funds, the EIDL loans, to pay some of what you're incurring now, but that's got to be done in a certain way. I'm seeing another question. Does that mean that if you made $200,000 in 2019 that you could only get a loan of $99,999? No, so if your total payroll in the last 12 months was 200,000, and 100,000 of that was over, where was one person over 100, so they're only going to look at 100, and then you're going to look at the monthly average of that, which I don't know, like $8,300, and you're going to multiply by that by 2.5, and that's how you come up with the loan amount. And another question is, where do I get an agent? Is an agent like a lawyer like yourselves or someone at a bank? Yeah, great question. So the banks are not specifically not agents. An agent is someone, our firm, our law firm is an agent. So that's where you can get an agent.
Okay. If an employee works part-time, makes less than 100,000 at the firm, but total income is more than 100,000 from his own full-time job, is this a part-time job? And this is a part-time job. I'm not sure what that means. You'd have to read it. It's in the chat room.
Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry. Part-time, but makes less than 100. Total income is more than 100. I'm sorry, it's kind of a confusing question, but you can shoot me an email. I know who this is who's asking the question. I know they have my email. Let's talk about that after, because I think I'm a little bit confused by the question. Are you, oh, excellent question. Are you able to apply for both PPP and the emergency grant? Very, very, very good question. Yes, you are. Now, you're gonna have to be careful about, if you wanna maximize the chances of keeping both and not having to pay one of them back, you wanna be very careful about how you spend the money, how you document it, making sure you're using them for different things, making sure you actually qualify for both. But yes, if you're doing it correctly, you can apply for both the PPP and the emergency grant. And I think it's 12:01, so we're 1 minute past when we said we'd end. I don't know.
We did have a question that came up earlier, one of the pre-questions, and I think it was, she was looking to, how was it? Oh, she's employed and still working, but her employer is not paying her and refuses to lay her off, so she can't get unemployment. So how can she proceed?
The employer's not paying her and is requiring to, she be, well, it depends. It would be illegal for her employer to not pay her and require her to work, but it sounds like that's not what's happening. If she has been essentially furloughed, so employer's not paying her and she's not working, then the rules for unemployment insurance have been expanded greatly. Again, you can look to that Department of Labor website. These are run through the state, so it's not a federal program, but they have a page there that talks about the expanded benefits and that will point you to your state's appropriate website. But now furloughed workers are included in the ability to get these expanded unemployment insurance benefits. So I would recommend go ahead and apply for those through your state. Understand that just like with these SBA loans, these state offices are overwhelmed. Some websites are crashing, so just you got to keep at it. And you can't always expect that you're going to get the best advice through that agency if you get somebody on the phone the first time, since this is all new. But furloughed workers, which this would be a furloughed worker, would be entitled to unemployment benefits through your state.
That's great. That's a great answer. I didn't realize that they had expanded their.
Yeah, on that note, just for the expansion, also what we call gig workers, 1099 workers, are for the first time eligible for unemployment benefits. So, you know, you're an Uber driver, you work for Instacart, you know, you're not a full-time employee of someone else. Normally you would not be eligible for unemployment benefits. Most of those workers now will be. So I'd say most people now who are out of work for whatever reason are going to be covered by unemployment insurance. Now, getting that money is going to take a while, just like for these SBA loans, but a lot of people are going to be eligible for those. And the funds have been increased. The amount of time you can receive them has been increased. So once the money shows up and they get this figured out, it's going to be a great benefit.
That's awesome. And so if you are offering free consultations, is that true? 30 minutes, you said?
No, not a free one. Paul and I are offering a paid one, a joint consultation.
Joint consultation. And how can they sign up? Just by emailing you?
Yeah, they can email us for that. That's right.
And, you know, if they don't need a consultation with both of us, they could contact us separately. But what we've found is a lot of business owners, they'll be on the phone with me and they'll be like, you know, I've got this very specific employment issue, harassment or whatever, or something about laying people off, right? And, you know, I'll send them back to Tom and they're asking Tom questions that should be directed to me. So we're gonna try a thing where, like, to avoid this whole back and forth, you as a business owner have both a business law specialist and an employment specialist with you to talk about your own tailored situation for a full hour, and we can plan your, you know, your legal issues together. So that's the idea. But you don't have, if you don't want both, then you don't have to.
It's at a reduced rate. I mean, this is not our full hourly
We're
rate.
both accounting for the fact that there's two of us, so we reduced our rates to accommodate that, but yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. And then if anybody wants marketing tips, of course, reach out to me. I'm happy to do a free consultation for whatever business or give you some ideas. I am coined as a professional instigator, so I would love to instigate some success in your business. And I think that will wrap us up. Tom, Paul, you have any last final thoughts?
Only last thing is a shout out to Angela from my office, who has helped us put this together and run it and worked through some bumps at the beginning. So many thanks, Angela, for your help on this.
Yes.
Thanks to everybody for joining and for taking the time, as Paul mentioned. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
All right, it was a great day.
This is recorded, so we will be recirculating the recording for those who are interested. We'll be circulating that too later. All right, everybody, good luck with everything.
Bye.
Thank you.